All right, welcome to today's episode of Wise Warrior Conversation. We have Della Minichella. So I think we connected about a month ago. Um, and we both have a love and an interest in the universal laws, manifestation, um, and what it means to really be in control and be co-creative in our lives. So Della, can you introduce yourself to everyone?
Hi, I have been on a spiritual path for close to 40 years, and I am a licensed master science of mind manifestation teacher. So I've been teaching this philosophy for almost 30 years. And my goal is to help women entrepreneurs learn how to use mental mastery and spiritual principles so they can create the life that they want to have. Because we have access to the power that created the entire universe from nothing, and we just have to learn how to use it successfully so we can have the lives that make your heart sing.
I love that. And, I know like for myself and, friends and clients and stuff, it's that like I'm doing the positive affirmations and nothing's changing. And I'm like angry and frustrated, and, like undoing everything,
Exactly.
that positive thought can have. So, how do you help somebody who's kind of in that mindset of like they think that they're doing all the right things, but it's not actually giving them the results that they want?
Okay, well, there are a couple of things. First of all, the universe's timeline is not necessarily the same as ours. So we have to really understand that when we put an order in for whatever it is that we're asking, it's being taken care of. And we may not see it yet, but that doesn't mean it's not on the way to us. And we don't want something before we're ready for it because that would not be our highest good. So you want to recognize that this law is infallible. It always says yes, and it is working in the background to do what needs to be done to bring it to us. But we also need to be aware of our own feelings because we are vibrational beings, and our feelings are going to either attract to us something that we want or something that we don't want. And I used to do training in corporations for 20 years, and I used to teach a very scientific way of knowing what you're thinking, and it's called your yuck feeling. And basically, what you want to do is you want to pay attention to your body, because a lot of times we'll rationalize something in our brain and we'll create the story, but our body really knows what's going on. So if you are having this yuck feeling, and this is a yuck feeling, like, oh God, that is telling you that your thoughts are negative. So that's your indication. And whatever you need to do to come up with positive thoughts, that's what you need to work on. And I also tell people to think about things that make them happy and to write a list of all of those things. Because when you're in a negative state, it's really challenging to get out of it and to think of something positive. But if you already have a list and you know that if I do X, Y, and Z and I do this, I'm going to get into a better mood, I'm going to feel better, then you have a really positive resource to shift your state of being. So, like, I know for me, when I feel down or depressed, or, the universe doesn't seem to be doing what I wanted to do when I wanted to do it, I usually go to what I call, excuse me, my manifesting masters. I have books of people who are really knowledgeable about how the universe works and so on. And I go to the parts that I need to remember in their books so I can get back on track. So that is something that I would definitely encourage anyone to do, is to create a list. What makes me feel good? And then when you don't feel good, you go to the list and say, okay, what can I do? And that will help to change your state of mind. Because if you don't change your state of mind, you're not going to get what you want. Because the universe is always listening and it is always reacting to the energy and the vibration that we are offering it.
I know when I was sick in my late 20s and early 30s, and I was really in that negative mind space. Um, I don't know. I must have read about like the gratitude journaling and things like that. So I'm like, I started doing that every night. Like, what am I grateful for? What do I love about myself?
Mhm.
All that stuff. And like to this day, I know that that's one of the things that helped me get better. And I remember, kind of a few months after I had been doing it, I had a day at work where, it's one of those days where nothing is working out and like you're in tears because you're so angry and frustrated and like I went into my bedroom and I was gonna just like be in my shit for however long I needed to be. And I decided, I was like, I don't want to stay here. So I start reading that my journal.
Okay.
Um, and like within a matter of seconds, like my whole outlook changed. I felt better about myself and I could go back to whatever I needed to do. So there really is a power to gratitude journaling and, writing about like what you love, what makes you happy. So you have that reminder. So I love that advice.
Yeah, and every night I think of three things that I've done well. I learned this from a neuroscientist. And I have to tell you, some days it's not easy to think of three things I've done well, but I force myself to think of three things. And sometimes it could be that I did a good workout or I made a good dinner, or especially if I'm not working on that day. And I always, always, always end up with three things at least that I'm grateful for. And sometimes it's simple things like I have a clean sheets on my bed. I love clean sheets. It doesn't take much to make me happy. That makes me happy. I love my mattress. I love my friends. And I just remind myself of that. And that's a practice that I do every single night before I go to sleep. And it sets me up to recognize that I'm really blessed. And, we go through lots of stuff in our lives. I've gone through lots of stuff. And if I didn't have those practices that I had already been doing for years, I don't know how I would have been able to navigate through them. Just like you said, if you didn't know, if you didn't have that practice, it would have been so much more difficult to get back on track if you could even do it. Because some people just can't. They don't know how to get back where they need to be.
Right. And I know when we talked, a month ago, the other important thing is really being very clear about what you want, because
Mhm.
you might think that you are asking for X, but the way that you have it worded, you're actually asking for Y. So you get Y, but Y isn't what you're wanting.
Mhm.
So, like, can you talk about that? Because I think that's really important.
Yeah. Well, I'm very much about clarity, and the philosophy that I'm licensed in, we do a thing called treatment, and basically, it's directing the universe to do what you want it to do. Okay, you recognize that you're part of the one mind and so on, and you direct the universe to bring to you what you want it to bring to you. And so many times, people would say things like, "Oh, increase prosperity," and this, and it sounds flowery and it's poetic, but what does that mean? If you get a penny, that's increased prosperity, but is that what you mean? No. So what I teach people, when I teach clients and I teach my students how to decide what it is, it's basically a picture. It's exactly like if you want more money. First of all, you would say, I now have. It's always in the present tense because the universe does not understand future. It's always in the now. So I now have this amount of money. What is the money? What is the number that you want? And ask for it. And what happens is, a lot of times if what the person wants is so far away from where they are right now, they start getting more fearful. So what I tell them to do is to say, okay, if I want this number, but I'm here and I can't really believe here without all these doubts coming in, then just bump it up. And then once you've been demonstrating that or manifesting that for a while, then you can add onto it and add onto it and add onto it. But you want to be very clear about what it is that you want the universe to do for you, because it's very literal.
Mm.
And one of the things that I have learned in my life is to never say something that I don't want, because the universe is always listening. And if you're saying it, even though you think you're joking, it doesn't know it's a joke and it's going to bring it to you. So you want to be very aware of what are you saying, because we do speak our lives into existence. And also, what are you asking for? And if you can't come up with a picture of what you're asking for, the universe can't either. So you
Right.
want to be really clear. And if you can, if it's too far to start here, then start here and then just build on it. But that's the way you use it successfully.
Yeah. And I also think you gave the example when we talked about like a client who, I think her husband was ill and she wanted her husband to be out of pain.
Hmm.
And that didn't kind of like he was out of pain, but not in the way she had hoped.
Well, again, you have to be very specific, because the universal law of mind, you can call it whatever you want, it always, always acts on what you're deciding. Okay. We want to recognize that whether it's positive or negative, all it knows how to do is to act. But we have to be really clear about what it is we want. And if we find out that's not what I meant, you can always change it. So it's not like, oh my God, I failed. This is terrible. Oh my God. So, okay, wow, I didn't realize that's what I was asking for. So ask for something else and be more specific about what it is that you want. And know that this power is the power that created the entire universe from nothing, and we have access to it. So it can do anything. It is never restricted by anything in the physical world. It doesn't know about limitations or rejection or I can't have. No, you tell it what you want. You ask for it in the present tense. That's really, really important. Not I'm going to, I now have, because it doesn't understand future. Everything is in the present. So I now have. And you say what you want and know that you are placing an order. One of the analogies I like to use with clients is when you order something from Amazon, you don't keep on checking right after you've ordered it to see if it showed up. You know it's going to come, but it may not be today. It may not be tomorrow, but you know that when you ask for it, you will get the delivery of what it is that you've asked for. It's the same thing with the universe, except of course the universe could do so much more than Amazon. So we don't keep checking up on it because every time we check to see if we have what we wanted, what we want, and we realize it's not there, we are giving another idea to the universe. Like, oh, I don't have this. Okay, that's what you're looking at. That's what you're focusing on. We'll just make sure you have more of it. So a lot of what I teach my clients, and it's part of the spiritual practices, is being aware of our thinking, because our thinking creates our feelings, which creates our vibration, which creates the results that we get in our lives. So a lot of introspection.
Yeah. And I think that lack, if it's not there, like, because I think a lot of times, like, we've been taught like manifestation is supposed to be immediate.
Mm-hmm.
And it isn't. Like
Nope.
sometimes it is, but most of the time, like there's a process that has to happen. Sometimes there's things where like we need to expand
Yes.
to hold what we're calling in.
Mm-hmm.
But, it is that like if we keep checking of like, is it here? Is it here? We don't believe that it, like we're in that lack mentality and not the abundance of the universe.
Right. Like we call it, we invoke, which means we direct the universe, and it's involution and evolution. So it has to unfold. Like I am now living in my dream house. My husband and I moved to Florida 4 years ago, and I'm living in the house of my dreams. The house didn't just show up overnight. It took a year from the time that we signed the contract before the house was built. But in the meantime, I kept on imagining it in my own mind. I kept on living in the house in my own mind. And I knew that at the right time, I would have my house. So we want to think about that, because so many people try to sell programs and say, yes, I'll even manifest for you, or you do this in 22 seconds or less. It doesn't work that way. Again, the universe is always paying attention to what we're thinking and feeling. So if we have a positive idea for 22 seconds and then we don't have it, we go back to the negative, we're giving it new directions. So I think one of the things I want the people who are going to hear this to really be aware of is to pay attention to what we're thinking and what we're feeling. And don't judge, don't make yourself bad. Oh my God, I'm in a negative state. Just change it, just shift, because we could always make another decision.
And if somebody, even like if they're trying to get themselves out of that negative loop, but they're struggling, like how do you help clients like that? Sometimes I think maybe they're not always aware about how negative they are, or like they're just struggling because things are so bad that it's hard to see themselves on the other side of it. Like, how do you help clients like that?
Okay, a couple of things. Well, again, that yuck feeling, because that's a lot of people don't realize they're in a negative state. But if you're going like this, your mind and your body are connected. So when you're saying something negative in your head, your body's going to change. So if I'm sitting like this tells my brain to be in a positive state. So actually, that's one thing you could do. You can change your body posture and you instantaneously change your state of mind, because it's connected. But if I start going like this, I'm doing this because my brain is focusing on something negative. So I need to shift it. And again, one of the easiest ways you can do that is to just roll your shoulders back, pick up your chin a little bit, like you just won the Olympic gold medal of your favorite sport. I used to do that at one of my workshops. But that's one of the easiest things to do. But also, one of the things that I do is I literally shut my eyes, because sometimes what's going on in your life is so difficult and so challenging, and it seems like it has so much power over you that it's really, really hard to even start to become negative. And what I literally do is I shut my eyes because I don't want to be I don't want my attention to be focusing on the negativity. And I want to start to turn within to know the truth that I know, because that's how I can get back on center. And one of the things that I shared with you when we had our conversation was when my husband and I first moved down to Florida, we found out he'd had a very rare form of cancer, which was not a very good form of cancer. And I'm like, oh my God, we just signed a contract for a house. He might not even be able to move in with me. I mean, this challenged me on such a deep level. And I made a decision. I said, I have two choices here. I have the choice of being worried, which I really was, or I have the choice of trying to be as positive as I can at any moment, because I know what's going to happen with both of those scenarios. If I'm going to stay in a negative state, it's going to get worse. If I'm going to try to be as positive as I can at that moment, then I'll do the best I can. And you actually start to shift a little bit at a time. And I did a lot of spiritual practices to be in that mindset. And some of them that I shared with you are, I did Treat Me, which is my form of directing the universe to tell it what I want. And every single day, 3 times a day, I imagined hearing the words that he's in remission. Every single day, I imagined hearing the words, he's in remission, he's in remission. And when he finally did go into remission, he said, I can't believe it. And I said, yes, I can. I saw this every day for, 3 times a day for almost a year. Of course. So because I was priming my thinking to expect what I wanted, even though it wasn't there yet, it was a way to focus also. So if you know what you want, what I definitely suggest you do every single day. I learned this from a coach, and let me tell you, it really made a big difference. 3 times a day, you want to imagine that you already are living what you want. Okay, I used to teach this for years, but I got a coach in 2019 who told me you have to do it 3 times a day. I'm like, yes, okay, I'm getting permission. Because in our society, we only focus on action. And action is not all of it. And if you don't have the right mindset that matches what you want, you are not going to get it. Okay, so that's really important for people to understand. Your consciousness equals your circumstances. So if you are taking action towards a goal and your consciousness doesn't match it, you're not going to get it. But if you work on the inside as you're working on the outside, you're building it from both levels, the spiritual level, the consciousness level, and also the activity level. Because you're not going to just sit there and say, okay, show up. You have to do your part too. So, and it can be really, really challenging. But what I also tell my clients to do is to come up with a journal of things that they wanted and they actually manifested, because the divine doesn't change. It's not like it's going to be here for you today and next week or tomorrow it's going to be. No, you can't have it. So when you have experience in your own life of, wow, this happened and it seemed that this was terrible and it wasn't going to change, but it did, you write it down and you keep building that and building that, because that's how you build faith. And I'm lucky, because I'm lucky, but I'm not lucky. But I've had a lot of situations in my life where it was really devastating, but it turned out well. I remember one time we had a lawsuit. 4 years it took, 4 years for it to work out well. And I'm like, wow. Of course I did spiritual practices during that whole time, but it finally worked out to the last minute. We were just about to go to court and they settled. And I'm like, so this is the phrase that I use all the time. I know in whom I do believe. And I know that no matter what is showing up outside, I know that this presence of love, because the divine is love, infinite power, but love first and foremost, that love will get you through. And sometimes it's, I've said, look, I can't do this. You do it, because I don't even have I can't. And it carried me through. And every single time it worked out well. So that's another thing that the listeners can do, is to build a journal of their own experiences where they have wanted something and it came. I have a sign that I have in my bathroom that it says, I realize I now have the things that I prayed for in the past. So it's a reminder. I have reminders all over my house, but it's a reminder that, okay, I have this now, but I prayed for this, or I traded for it, same words. And that's for me to know, okay, it doesn't matter if it doesn't look like it's shifting at the moment. It is going to work because I'm dealing with a principle, and that principle always works the same way.
So my friend Sidrid says hello. She's also in Florida.
Okay. She might be getting, we're getting thunderstorms right now, but so she might be getting it also.
We finally have sun coming out. um, when you were talking earlier about like the body posture, I had a yoga instructor many years ago talked about like lights on, lights off. So like when you were depressed, it's like this shuts down. And lights on and your whole outlook changes. And I remember like walking around at work, seeing people in that collapsed state and like how drained of life that they looked. And so like that was my clue, like lights on, lights on.
Yeah. And that's great. And if you could have like a little phrase that you would trigger that change, absolutely. So what, lights on, whatever, if that works. But I remember one time I was doing a management training program, and there was a woman who was a department head. She was a doctor. She was an MD. So you would think she'd have a lot of confidence. So I was trying to teach her something about, talking to an employee that wasn't doing well or whatever. And she was like this. And I'm like, no, before we even try to have you language what you need to say, you need to push your shoulders back and pick up your head. As soon as she did that, all of a sudden she felt differently, and she was able to do what she needed to do. So something so simple is amazingly effective in not only changing how people respond to us, because they're always feeding off how we are, but also it changes what is going on in our own thinking. Simple little things.
Yep. And Sidrid says she's in Davie, Florida.
Where's that?
I think it's close to Orlando, but I could be wrong.
Okay, so I'm by the Treasure Coast. I'm about 2 hours south of Orlando.
Okay, beautiful. The other thing, so like the treatment, can you give people like just a small taste of like what a treatment would be?
Okay, so basically a treatment is just an easy way of directing the law. And when I first learned it, I said, oh, this is so cold. But it's really not. It's actually a very simple way to effectively, okay, so I'm going to say effectively, to direct the law. So the first thing you do with a treatment, and if anybody's interested, on my website, I give away a free ebook that they can learn how to do it. But the first thing you want to recognize is we are one with the infinite power of the universe. And you see my arms going up. We want to recognize we're connected to something that is infinite. So it's not just us. We're not trying to do it ourselves. We're connected to this infinitude of power that can create anything and everything. So once we recognize that we're one with it, and what we do, like say, let's do the example of prosperity. I love treatments for prosperity. Okay, so if somebody wants to have more prosperity, the first thing they would think about is, okay, what qualities of the universe are in alignment with prosperity? So you could say infinite abundance, riches, infinite power, infinite good. All of these are formless, but it's part of this power that we want to connect to. The next step is to recognize that since there is only one life, and the life of the universe or the divine is my life too, what is true of it is true of me. I like to use the analogy of an ocean and a wave. So the ocean is, all over the place. And you can see a wave on maybe brushing up on a shore, or maybe a surf, a wave that's really high that somebody could surf at. So it looks different when you're looking at it, but it's still connected to the ocean. So what is the qualities of the ocean are also qualities of the waves, even though the waves show up differently. So you want to recognize that what is true of the infinite is true of me because I'm part of it. That's where we're getting the power. We are not trying to create the power. We're tapping into the power that already exists. It's already part of who we are. And then the next thing is you decide, you let the universe know what it is you want. I now accept. It's always in the present tense. And if somebody is very far away from where they want to be, I want them to be honest. So let's say somebody's struggling with money and they are behind on their bills and they would like to be able to manifest $5,000 per month, let's just say. But when they say, I am now earning $5,000 a month, and they're like, oh my God, there's no way. You want to be honest with where you are. Some people will tell you, oh, don't pay attention. No, you want to be honest. So you could say things like, first of all, I do it in the third person. So I would say Della is now. And if I'm so far away from that prosperity, I might say Della is now willing to accept the consciousness of. It sounds like it's just words, but it's not, but it's giving you layers. But you get to a point that Della is now willing to accept the consciousness of being able to pay all of her bills in full on time with money left over. That would be the first step. So I'm being honest with where I am at the moment. I'm not trying to pretend oh yes, I'm the consciousness of 5,000 a month, because if I'm not, you know what my brain's going to do? No, you're not. What are you kidding? There's no way. So you don't want to do that. You want to recognize where you are, be honest with where you are, and then just throw it in the treatment. Della is now accepting that she is able to pay for all of her bills in full on time with abundance left over. She is willing to accept money from known and unknown places, expected and unexpected places, always in ways of good. I always put that in there. And once you start to attract that level of money every month, then you bump it up. You always want to grow with what you have. But you also, if you don't believe it, you say any feelings or doubts or that this cannot happen is dissolved. You want to recognize that. Don't pretend that you're not feeling it, because guess what? You are feeling it. So throw it into the treatment, and then you reaffirm what you want, and then you let it go to the universal law, and you give gratitude, and so it is. And I'm telling you, this is such a powerful practice that in the school that I was in, I literally had to do these treatments for other people, and they had to verify changes. Like one of the people I did a treatment for, he had a court case that went on for years, and it was terrible. It was a libel suit and all this, whatever. And I treated, and they just solved it. And it's just, there's nothing too difficult for the universe to bring to you if you believe it. See, that's the kicker. If you believe it. So you have to build on your belief, and you want to start with little pieces and little steps, and then you can add on to it. But you want to get to the point of, okay, I let it go, and the universe is taking care of it. And sometimes then the doubts are going to pop up again. Those doubts are really with us for a lot of time. So what I tell my clients is, tell yourself it's in the law, it's done. It's in the law, it's done. And sometimes you might have to say that 100 times in a day, but that's another way of letting it go. Because once you pull it back, you're already directing the universe in a way that you don't want. So, and the more you do it, the easier it is. Like anything else, practice, you get better at it.
And I like that, by the law, it's done, because it's like, it's just also reprogramming the mind of like when the doubts come up, like it's like, you're just saying, I'm not. And I love the fact that you're also honoring where somebody is, because, I think that's the biggest thing is it's so easy to be stuck in that. Like, I want this, but this is my reality. And, it becomes frustrating because it's not getting there. But like those incremental changes, like that's how we learn, right?
Yes.
Like we don't just, wake up at, 6 months or however many months and start walking.
Right, exactly.
We start crawling, or even before that, we start kicking our legs and, doing those little micro movements that then becomes moving and crawling, and then we stand up and we fall down, and and then eventually we take our first step, and
right,
we fall, and we get keep getting back up. Like if every time we failed as a child, like we none of us would be walking.
And it's so interesting because there's such a mindset that success is instantaneous, and that is absolutely not true. But what happens when you're a child is when you first stand up and then you take that first step and you fall down, everybody's clapping. They're applauding the fact that you took one little step and you didn't get there. But so we, unfortunately, as we grow older, we're trained to think we need to get it done correctly every time, immediately. The world does not work that way. And again, going back to the relationship that I've developed with the divine, there have been times where I've actually said, I hate you, I hate you, I hate you, because that's how I'm feeling. But I know that it loves me, and I know that it's not going to, like, oh my God, I'm going to send thunderbolts to her. So that's another thing that I would recommend to anybody listening, is to create a relationship with the divine, that it is pure, perfect love, that you don't have to be perfect, that you don't have to think right the whole time. There are times I use the analogy, I'm sure you've seen the picture of like a little cat with just one claw. You've got a cat there, one claw hanging on a tree. Sometimes that's all the faith you can muster up.
Yep.
But when you know that this presence loves you and wants everything that you want for yourself and is willing to give it to you, that little bit is enough. You don't have to have perfect faith. There are times when that's not happening. But just wanting to be willing to want to have faith is good enough, because the universe is on our side. It loves us. It's there for us. It wants us to experience everything because it lives as us. It is experiencing the universe in physical form through us. So of course it wants us to have everything, but we have to be partners with it. And the way we are partners is with our thoughts and our feelings.
And like, to the point of like, oh, I hate you, like that is a relationship. How many
Yeah.
times, like, as children, do we hate our parents because like they said no to us, or like,
Right.
Whatever, like that's part of any relationship. We're going to get angry. It doesn't mean we don't love each other.
Right.
My mom used to say to me, she's like, I don't always like you, but I love you.
Yeah, I can understand that. I have grandkids now, so I can really understand that. But see, the religious tradition that I was brought up in, that is never acceptable. So I really had to do treatment or prayer work to change my belief about the divine. Because I woke up one day many years ago and I realized that I trusted my husband more than I trusted God. I'm like, okay, this has got to change. And I spent 3 years doing treatment work. I am the adored, treasured, beloved one. And I wanted, because I wanted the relationship where I knew that no matter what I did or did not do, I was still unconditionally loved. And that's the relationship I have, which is why I can say, I hate you, get away from me, I don't want you. And of course, then I literally do that sometimes, like, just don't. But, I'm grateful. I'm grateful that I have these practices, because I can't imagine living life without them, because life can be really challenging. It could be a health issue, it could be a money issue, it could be a relationship issue, it could be all of them, and I've had all of them. And it's really tough. But when you think you have to do it yourself, it becomes really challenging, because then you're depending only on yourself. And no matter how wonderful you may be, it's a heavy burden.
Mm.
But when you could realize you're connected to something that adores you and has the power to create anything and everything, it's like, oh, okay, fine. Now I can breathe. And so that's another thing I would definitely recommend someone does: create that loving relationship, so you know that you are never alone and you don't have to worry about anything, because this presence is always there with you to help you.
Yes, amen. And like this morning or this afternoon, I was, because I've always been bothered with like the phrase "the chosen ones." Because like to me, that's like that means like only these people have been selected, and like everybody else is damned. And I was like, that's not a loving God. So like,
That's right.
what does it really mean? And like the original concept, the original meaning of sin was separation from God.
Yes, or error of your thinking.
Yeah. And so, I used ChatGPT, and asked it, because I was just like, I don't understand this. And basically what it said is like that chosen thing has been manipulated within.
Yes.
But what it really means is that we choose to reconnect and have that relationship with God, with Source. How, like, because if somebody's has had bad religious experiences and God feels bad, it's Source. There's something, no matter what, even if you're an atheist, there's something.
Right. It created the universe, the intelligence, creative intelligence. Yeah. That's why I never use the word God when I work with clients, because of the fact that there are so many negative connotations for many people. And I use divine. So divine is just something more neutral and whatever, but it's still the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when I say the chosen one, I also tell my clients to develop that relationship because a lot of them, women are, I love women. So many of them don't realize how magnificent they are. And they think they're not good enough and they're not worthy enough. And they're not sure that they should be asking for more wealth or success. That's why I invite them to also create these treatments for themselves to develop that relationship. You are the chosen one. Everybody can be the chosen one. It's not like one group of people or one person. Everyone can be that. Like you said, it's that connection. And it's also knowing that I really want that loving relationship. And I just want to know that I am loved and I can be loving to others because I know that I'm loved and I'm not being judged and found to be, fault. Oh my God, you didn't do this. So then you can actually give from your own heart in a greater way because you know that you're divinely loved.
Yeah. And you don't have to be perfect to receive it.
Oh, I have a Blessed Mother necklace or a medal that I wear, and not because it's the Catholic or the Christian, because to me this is a representation of divine love. Okay, divine. The law is the male aspect of the divine. This is the love. And it's like you could do whatever or not do, and you will never be found to be at fault because I love you unconditionally. So I need to remind myself of that a lot of times.
I love that. What has been like your most challenging case? Like I know you talked a little bit about some of the court cases and it taking a few years, but like, or maybe what's been the most like rewarding to help somebody with?
Most of my clients really like to use treatments, which I'm really happy about because they recognize that it works. My challenge with them sometimes is when they're struggling with something and I'll ask, did you treat about it? Oh, no, I forgot. It's like, it has to be a way of life. But okay, so I'll tell you how I got started on this path because I used to work in corporate America and my husband and I were married for a number of years and we were trying to have a baby, but we couldn't have one. So I was an executive at that time. And people would say, so Della, when are you going to have a baby? And I would say, nope, don't want kids, because at that time, which was quite a while ago, women who were executives were not, thought of very fondly if they were going to be on maternity leave. As a matter of fact, it wasn't maternity leave, it was sick leave at that time. But anyway, so I kept saying, I don't want kids, I don't want kids, I don't want kids. And the universe said, okay. We were going to the best fertility doctors in New York City. And we were actively trying. But every time I said, I don't want kids, the universe said, okay, fine. When I realized what I was doing, I stopped saying that because, again, you want to pay attention to what you're saying. You speak your life into existence. And when you're speaking, the universe is always listening. So when I realized what I was doing, I stopped that. Then I started to envision that I was pregnant with my husband's baby. And my husband and I had gone to some agency to talk about adopting a newborn. And at that time, they wanted to have somebody from the couple to stay home with the baby for 2 months. And I said, okay, fine. They called a couple of months later to start the investigation to see if you're, good people or whatever. And I asked, is that still in effect, the 2 months where somebody has to stay home? Because my husband was an executive also. We couldn't just say, oh, sorry, I'm not here. And the woman said, no. It's actually the birth mothers wanted to be 6 months. And I said, well, just take our names off the list because I can't take off and my husband can't take off for 6 months. I'm going to have my own baby. I said that very specifically. I did get pregnant the next month. But the other thing, and this is another thing that's really important. A lot of times we think we know what we want and it has to be what we want. But the universe is loving, and sometimes what we want is not for our highest good. So if we stick to what we want specifically and we are not willing to accept something else, we're not going to get it. So that was a really hard concept for me to understand. This was at the beginning of my journey, which is a very long time ago. And there's a phrase I'm sure you've heard of, let go and let God. Again, going back to the religion that I was brought up in, if I let go what I wanted, I was not getting what I want. Let go, no. So I couldn't understand, how could I let this go? Because I knew I had to, but I didn't know how to. And what I finally got to recognize and realize for myself is, what does the idea of having a baby mean to me? and it was something to love. So I said, okay, if we can't have children and I have something that I can love, and that feeling of wanting to love something is satisfied, does it matter how?
Mm.
And I said, no. And I said, okay, I'm going to adopt a cat because I had a cat when I was younger. I never got the cat because I was pregnant.
Mm.
So it's really important. And this is what I tell my clients. This is equivalent or something better. You have to be willing to accept something equivalent or better, because the universe is not going to give you less than. But so many times people want this, and I'm not going to, this, I have to. You're not going to get it. So recognize.
I have this bigger thing.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So you want to recognize that. And that's something that I always say when I do meditation, visualize what I want. This is equivalent or something better is now manifesting for me. And so that was my starting point. That was what got me on the spiritual path. And it, like I said, was a very long time ago. And thankfully I have grown since then because I've learned a lot since then. But I also, and I think I shared this with you about my husband, be careful what you say. Again, the universe does not have a sense of humor. My husband has diabetes, and he would always say, I'm healthy, I'm healthy, I'm healthy. And I'm saying, he never took care of his diabetes and other parts. I'm like, no, you're not. No, you're not. No, you're not. Because I wanted him to manage his diabetes more successfully. Well, I attribute the cancer that my husband got from me saying that, because the universe said, oh, you don't want it to be okay? He's not healthy? Okay, you got it. I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I said, oh my God. So then I used to say, I would talk to his body and say, you're so healthy, you're so well, because everything is energy. And you could talk to people, you could talk to plants, I talk to my appliances all the time, thanking them for working. So I would like talk to his body, you're healthy, because it's energy. It's still getting what you want. And I would also say, Santa's going to bring me Michael's remission for Christmas. My husband's name is Michael. That's all I want for Christmas. Michael to be your remission. Michael to be your remission. That's all I care. Santa's going to bring me that. Don't you know, right before Christmas, Michael went into remission. Hmm. So you want to think about what you're saying. And if you don't want it to be your future, do not say it.
Amen. So Sidrid says, Della, that she has the exact story about like the child. Unfortunately, she could never have kids. And she writes about that in her new book. I think it's Be You, if I'm not mistaken. But you are also working on a book.
Yes.
I love that I have so many friends who like are authors and
well, this is not my okay. So I am actually rewriting a book from 1910. I'm sure many of your listeners have heard of The Science of Getting Rich. Well, one day I was listening to it in my car, and I realized this language is so, it just doesn't make sense anymore. And it doesn't make sense to women, definitely, because it was all geared to, the guys that were running the world at that time. And I got this idea to rewrite it and translate it into modern language that women can relate to. So I actually have rewritten the whole book, and I'm on my third or fourth edit to get to the point where I like it. But I've also done something else. I put in an action guide after each chapter because I'm a trainer and I'm a teacher. And I know that if you just read something and you don't do something with it, it's not going to be beneficial to you. So I put in each of the end of the chapters what I would say if I were in a classroom trying to process with the people in the classroom. What do you think about this, and how would you need to do this? So then they could start to work with it to actually get results in their own lives. Because if it stays on the shelf and it doesn't do anything, you don't do anything with it, your life is not going to change. And the name of it is The Science of Getting Rich, especially for women. And I'm so excited because of course, this is what I'm working with treatment and visualizing and so on. And it's going to sell 1 million copies. I'm speaking it into existence. It's going to sell over 1 million copies so we can help over 1 million women learn how to use these tools successfully to create the lives they love.
I love that. And Sidrid said her husband also has diabetes. It's like you guys have the same life.
Okay. Yeah. Well, but thankfully
Sidrid, I think, is also from New York.
Okay. Well, my husband's diabetes is thankfully under control because, again, I will never say anything negative And you know what's really interesting? We went through a lot of stuff with his cancer, and then, oh, I had cancer also at the same time. So that was kind of fun. And now, you know, we have little health things, but they're just like little annoyances. Again, look, how do you want to look at something? Is it like, oh my God, this is no annoyances? Okay, we're managing it, we're dealing with it. It's fine, because we want to recognize that our interpretation of something creates our feeling about it, and our feeling becomes our vibration, and that is what the universe is using to create our lives. So how do you want to see things? What is the choice? What is it? We can choose to look at anything anyway. There's no right answer. The question you want to ask yourself is, which one is going to help me stay in a state of mind that I want to have to create the life that I want to live? And then that's it.
I love that. Because it's simple but powerful. And a lot of times, like, we think, if it's simple, it's easy to do, but it's not. Like, to change the way that you're thinking, the way that you're processing, what you're speaking into existence. Like,
yes.
You've got to catch yourself. And again, it's not about being perfect all the time, but it's like, as soon as you catch yourself in that energy, it's like, I need to change.
Yeah.
I need to flip that switch. I need to turn the lights on.
Yeah, absolutely. And yoga is I do yoga. It's a practice. See, this is what a lot of people don't realize. This is a practice. This is a way of life. It is a way of being. It's not something you do once and then you're done. No, you live this way all the time. I mean, there are things every single day. I do certain treatments about certain things I'm working on. I visualize my book selling 1 million copies 3 times a day. Then I have my gratitude about things I want and things that I already am experiencing. I also practice gratitude in advance, and I teach my clients to do that too. Because if you know you're going to get something, you don't have to wait for it to be grateful for it. And that is a really strong message to the universe. Expectancy is what creates our lives. Because we could do all this stuff, and if we don't expect to get what we want, that's what we're going to get, not getting what we want. So when you have gratitude in advance, it's like saying, okay, I know. And that's another practice that you can have. It's all these like little spiritual games that I play with myself. Well, they're not games. I know what I'm doing. I'm training my thinking. I'm training my mind to think the things that I want to think. I also do another practice that I learned from another coach, which is to say, affirmations don't work. The reason they don't work is because if you say an affirmation, I am like a billionaire, and you aren't a billionaire, your brain's going to go, what do you create? Okay. What you do is you create what I call powerful statements. And you're recognizing that it may not be true right now, but it will be true in the future, because I'm programming my brain. We program our thinking with our words. So I literally have, I think it's 15 or 16 different things that I say 3 times a day, 3 times, 5 times a day. First thing in the morning, before my breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and right before I go to sleep. Every single day, because I want my brain to start to believe it. And we learn and we create our thought patterns by what we say, repetition, consistency. So that's another practice, and it works.
And coming from like a corporate background, because like there's a lot of women, especially like if they've got, kids and jobs and all this stuff, they might think, oh my God, like to do that many things, so many times a day, like I don't have time for one more thing. How do you?
Okay. So, all right. So it takes to do the 15 statements 3 times each, whatever. It takes literally, I timed it, I think it takes 2 minutes. 2 minutes. If you can't give yourself 2 minutes, you've got an issue. Okay, so, but again, what happens is, since I've been doing it so often, as soon as I wake up, it's the first thing I say. My brain knows what to do. Where do I do my gratitude in advance? When I'm in the shower. Because I know when I'm in the shower, I'm going to be grateful that Michael's in remission, and this, that, the other thing, and this, and then I go through my whole little thing. I have on a card the treatments that I'm working on, so I remind myself that I'm going to be doing that. And it just becomes a way of life, a way of being. And it's just how you are. What I like to do is I like to piggyback it on something you already do, because then it's just easier to remember. And so it doesn't take a lot of time. When I'm driving my car, I'm doing treatments and whatever. When I'm walking, I'm doing things like that. So just figure out how to integrate it into your life.
Yeah. And I like that. Like, when we're driving, our thoughts are going off in a million different directions. We can either
Yes.
let it control us, or we can control that time and our thought process and say, this is what I'm going to focus on for my 10, 15, 20, 30-minute drive, or however long, your drive is, to use that time to be intentional with your time.
Yeah. Because remember, I know moms are overwhelmed. Trust me, I was there. But you're creating your life. You're creating the life for yourself, for your kids, for your family. This is your future. And when you really understand how to do this, like for instance, you brush your teeth every day. You take a shower every day. It's a practice. You don't say, well, I'm going to, not do it because I don't have time. No, you do it. You just build it into your life. And I also tell my clients, make it easy to succeed. So start really small. You don't have to do 15 different statements, like I do. I've added on because I wanted to program my brain. Start with one thing you want to believe about yourself. I'm worthy to receive, abundant good or whatever. And basically, you may not believe it now because it's not an affirmation. You're programming your brain. You're creating new neural pathways in your brain. So, you practice with that. And then once you do that and you keep on working on that, you say, oh, I want to believe this about myself. And then you start to add something else. It really can be very simple. Now put it on a postcard or a little index card, paper. This way you don't have to think about it. You just read it right there.
And I like that, I had the thought that popped into my head, like when you were talking about kids, like, a lot of times, you do, you might have like a prayer before bed or before you eat, like to make your treatment your prayer, like as a family, and, teaching our kids to have these habits.
Absolutely. And my granddaughter, she just turned 13 yesterday. And sometimes she'll say, Grandma, could you treat for this? I know her mother always asks me to treat for this. She sends me little text messages. Can you treat for this? Can you treat for that? I'll teach you how to do it. No. Your treatments always work. So teaching the kids how to do this is so powerful, because then they learn that they are not just recipients of life. They can co-create what they want because they have that power. Oh my God, this is such a gift that we give our children. It is really amazing to allow them to recognize that.
I love that. So we're getting close to the top of the hour. How can somebody who is just like, oh my God, Della, like you're speaking to my heart, like how can somebody get in touch with you, work with you?
Okay, so my website is Spiritual Success RX, all together, spiritualsuccessrx.com. And you can go there, you can sign up for my newsletter. There's the ebook that'll teach you how to do treatments. And there are 3 treatments in there already, one for money, one for success, and one for health that you can start using today. And there's also a place where you can connect with me and we can set up a complimentary strategy call to help you get back on track.
Beautiful. Thank you. This has been such a great conversation. And I think it's, I think it's so important, especially, with the way that the world is right now. Like, we need to remember how powerful we are, and we get to control and create the world that we want, not, public figures and, prophecy and all that stuff. Like as humans get to co-create the world that we want in a loving way, loving and abundant. And
we're all here. The purpose of us being here is to experience joy and express joy and love. That's it. And anything that we do that allows us to do that while also not interfering with the free will of other people, that's it. We can do it. That's why we're here, to enjoy life, to express love, and to share our gifts with the world that we can do only in the way that we can do it. And so, yes, recognize who we are, and we don't have to be worthy, and we don't have to be better or good. No, right where you are, you're perfect, and you deserve to have everything in your life that your heart wants. And this is one of the ways that you get to learn how to do that.
Amen.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Do you have an idea of like when your book is going to be coming out?
My goal is to probably, I will submit it for publication in September.
Okay, perfect. Well, like when you go to do your book launch, I'd love to have you back on. So
Wonderful. Yeah, I'm really excited about it because women need to learn. Again, this is my market as I work with spiritual women. They need to recognize what wonderful creatures, people they are, and that they deserve everything that their heart wants. And that's through this book, I'm hoping that they get that understanding.
they will. I love that. And I hope you and Sadrid can connect because, oh, she just DM'd you. So you and Sadrid, because Sadrid is like this powerful, incredible woman. I think you guys will love each other.
Fantastic. Excellent.
Good. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I really appreciated this. It was wonderful. And look at the perfect timing. The storm just stopped and I'm going out, so the rain went away. I love it.
And I will post your website in the comments, and then I'll be uploading this to YouTube. So if you're watching there, it'll be in the description. Please like and subscribe and share this because every man and woman, but especially women, need to know the power of this manifestation. So
fantastic.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening.
You too. Thanks a lot. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.